Hey folks, welcome to Ask Strong Towns Anything. Today we're doing a special session on safe and productive streets and that core requirement that our communities actually measure and weigh the questions about how we make our places safe, but also allow them to be productive. In fact, one of the ways that we frame the question of what is a street is that quite simply is a platform for building wealth and building local prosperity. And always we emphasize that prosperity is the prosperity of the full person, the prosperity of the individual feeling dignified, honored, and welcome into our places. And that when we do that, we actually begin to see things like land values beginning to increase, turnover of sales actually beginning to improve for local businesses, a sense that someone is more likely to take pride in their neighborhood, take pride in their home, even do those small things of investing in their places. And when we get those core fundamentals right, we can begin to see, not through some master plan, but rather just through the observation that this is what we are inclined to do, that when we feel comfortable in a place, when we feel like we are welcome there, that we actually are willing to spend a little bit more time there, spend a little bit more of our hard-earned resources there, spend a little bit more of our human capital in helping together to take pride in what we have there. And so when we talk about safe and productive streets, I always insist as we talk about it, that we need to keep that closely bound together. It is not enough simply to do mechanical things to make a street safe if we are not simultaneously actually creating a great environment, a great space, and actually learning from the tools of biologists how to observe habitat that we are creating rather than the tools of an engineer who simply says, do we have the right inputs so that way we will get exactly the types of outputs that we have predicted. There is so much in this topic. There's a great deal of weight, of energy, but also of stories, of sadness, of longing for better. And I'm so grateful to be joined by Edward Erfurt, who is on our team as our chief technical advisor, having lots of experience himself, written recently about the experience of his son walking to the middle school and the way in which that route to the middle school actively disables people from actually being able to do simple things like moving to the school on foot. So many of the different dynamics that we experience. Also do want to mention, especially for those that are watching this afterwards on YouTube, welcome, by the way. We're glad that you also joined us in this. The Strong Towns Crash Analysis Studio. If you haven't come across it yet, go check it out, strongtowns.org/crash studio. It's been profound to see the roots of people examining specific intersections and passageways through their communities, through a Strong Towns lens, and asking, what is it that we have done? What is it that we need to do in order to change the design and space of this passage in order to make it actually function in a safe and enjoyable way? And so, Edward, maybe why don't you start with just a quick couple of thoughts for you? What comes to mind when we think of safer and productive streets? And then we'll go into our first question here.
Yeah, I think the thing that I want everybody here to think about is that each of us have the power to make our streets safer. We have been so removed from that idea that it just we need to go back to that. And I was just at an MPO meeting last night for a big street project that they want to do in my community. It's veiled under Safe Streets for All, but it was totally focused on the automobile, and the engineers were focusing on the throughput of traffic. They had no modules or no tables to talk about the human factor of people riding bikes and walking. They did all the right things. They did the walking audits, they did the observations, the photographs, but it wasn't until residents showed up and shared experiences and pointed out where bus stops were for the children to the conversation shifted. So I will tell all of you that you have the power to go and make your streets safer. And I think some of the things we're going to talk about today are going to illustrate that. If that is a shocking idea to you, and if you think you're stuck on that, you're in the right place. I would love to talk to anybody if we don't have enough time here to start to show what you can do in your own cities to make your streets safer. So I want to kick off with that, of that real challenge to the entire group.
Yeah, appreciate that. And just appreciate also the nod. I mean, as much as we're able to do this convening on Wednesdays is a great opportunity for this type of discussion. And in a moment here, we'll take a couple of the questions just from you in the audience as well. So definitely either drop them in the chat or put up your hand in a couple of moments, and we'll go to that. But the first one that we had submitted by Brian Russell, who I believe is in Bellingham, Washington, he said, "I want to connect two schools in a park with a half-mile of pedestrian corridor. Do you have a step-by-step toolkit to pedestrianize a residential street, and who are the stakeholders that I'm not thinking of?" And I don't see Brian on the call today, but Edward, you had some clarifying questions or sort of framing to help us kick this off. And certainly this is one of those areas. If anybody has a toolkit, drop it in the chat as well. We would love to see that. But Edward, some thoughts on this?
Yeah. So there are lots of toolkits. There's lots of things, safe routes to school, complete streets, T4 America, NACTO, all of these different groups. Lots of groups have developed these, a lot of communities have developed these toolkits. Toolkits also have a tendency to get the same shelf space as your comprehensive plan and your community plans, right? They are put together. Everybody feels good about it. We spend a lot of capital trying to get people to meetings, try to draw things up, trying to analyze it, and then we put on the shelf and nothing happens. And I know many of you have been in that experience as consultants, as residents, as elected officials. Happens again and again. What I want to do is I want to think through this differently. I want, if this comes up, let's think through a strong towns approach. I'm going to assume that this is coming from a citizen. This is somebody in the community that definitely wants to see this happen. There's slightly different things that I would expect somebody that is in technical staff in a municipality or somebody that's an elected official. But just as an everyday citizen, I'm observing something in my neighborhood. And sometimes we would frame that as I'm observing something in my community or a place in my community where somebody is struggling. And when we go through that, this park and school connection, that's a really lofty thing. Like, how do we do that? Oh my gosh, I've got to start talk to state highways. Oh, where are we going to find funding for all these things? That's a really big, lofty thing, and you will be fraught with many, many obstacles in moving that forward. If we identify this, the way I would frame this to think through it is not thinking about a toolkit, but thinking about a single sentence describing a struggle. So in that stretch, that half-mile stretch, which is like a 5-minute walk, 10 minutes if you have a toddler, in that stretch, where is an area there that somebody is struggling on that path? Is there a intersection that is poorly marked? Is there a missing sidewalk length? Are there shrubs overgrown in area? Is there some property that feels unsafe? Criminal activity may be perceived there. All of those. Focus on one of those. Focus on one of those struggles. Really simplify it down to, I call it the elevator speech or the single sentence. From that single sentence, I would elevate that and I would share it broadly. It's unsafe to walk or it's difficult to walk to the park because this intersection is bad. These shrubs are overgrown. There's trash in the area. We have a missing sidewalk. All of that stuff. What I found is that once you start to identify that as a community struggle, not as a problem, not as a negative, just sharing that piece, I find that people are more amenable to listening because they're like, oh yeah, I know that spot. Oh yeah, I'm scared of that place too. You start to build a coalition around you that agree that there is a struggle there. The second thing, I wouldn't jump to a toolkit. I'd actually jump to identifying what could you actually do. You've got a couple of people that agree with you, a couple of neighbors, or maybe just your family says this is a problem. What are the things that you actually could do in your role as citizen? It's really easy to show up to a council meeting and complain about it. It's really easy to send in the letters to city council or fill out the 311 and tell other people what to do. But what are the things, if you were to leave your house today with the resources available, you go do something? You may not be able to build a sidewalk, but you may be able to trim some shrubs. We did one of these walks in Chisholm, Minnesota. There's a big house that had all these overgrown shrubs. And on the walk, we asked people what could they do. Somebody from our walk actually went and knocked on the door, and they realized it was their cousin that lived in the house. Like, this is a small town, but by the time we rotated and got to the next block, most of the weeds had been knocked down because they were embarrassed and they just didn't have the excuse or motivation to deal with that stuff. But there's simple things, knocking on a door, talking to a neighbor, trimming some shrubs, picking up trash, that we may be able to do that. You also might be able to do some things that Norm shared that he's done in his own community. If there's a missing link in that area, or you want to show that people are actually there, like if you were actually doing improvement, people would actually use the sidewalk or cross the street, do something like host a block party, activate the space in a really easy way. Norm shared that in one of his stories where he did a flyer. He and his son went door to door, put flyers up, and voila, people emerged. You could do a trash pickup. You know, the vests we gave all of our local conversation leaders. You can go to IKEA, you can go to Harbor Freight, you can go to any of the hardware stores and get one. You can get a trash bag. When you put a vest on, all of a sudden you're an official person. The people will know that you're there, and you start picking up trash. That's another thing that you could do. In my community, they started doing walks about nothing. So think about that term. We're going to walk. We're not going to have an agenda. We're not going to talk about anything. I assure you, every one of the walks that we have in our community is about something, and action occurs. So getting people to walk that path, to experience that struggle that you've identified, that's how I would think through that. That awareness. Now, if you're like a techie person, go to a website, go to a Facebook page, go share the social stuff. If you're just a social person, talk to your neighbors. Like these seem like really tiny things. They seem like they're not going to make a difference, but I will assure you that as you start doing that, more people will come along. They'll start to understand and have more appreciation for your community, more awareness, and you never know who will be in that group working with you and what gifts they have to provide the community. They may be working on the infrastructure project that would build that sidewalk. Yeah, Ellen.
Thank you. I wanted to ask for my town in Washington, North Carolina. We are less than 10,000 community. We have formalized a coalition and against an NCDOT project. We have more than 600 residents who have activated and signed a petition. We've spoken at multiple city council meetings and RPO meetings. We've met with state representatives and state senators, and we are making what feels like no headway on what is going to turn a residential road in a small town into a 4-lane divided highway intended to push 60,000 cars through town when we're barely pushing 15,000 through town at the moment. So I guess my question would be, when you are following all of these steps, and we launched a podcast, we have a website, we've been on the news multiple times. Anyone and everyone, as far as we can throw a rock, is in opposition to this project. And yet the people, the stakeholders that actually get to finalize those decisions, don't care what the community wants and what the community thinks. Our city manager told us that the bike plan, the pedestrian plan, our land use plan are simply plans that don't have to be followed. That I guess I'm kind of at a loss, is when you try to follow all those suggested steps, is like, our community's been fighting against this for more than 10 years. And right-of-way acquisition is scheduled to begin in August. Are we really just that much at a loss? Where other avenues could we take to try to actually influence a corridor that prioritizes pedestrian safety, and turn it into a thoughtful boulevard, which is more what we're looking for?
So this sounds like it's a federally funded project. It is probably something that has been in your long-range transportation plan for 20 years. These are the things that show up. I don't know if you have an MPO, but
We have an RPO, and
RPO,
the project came into fruition in 2014.
Yes. So this is something people have been working on for a very long time. And the way that the federal funding and those plans work is that they slowly move all the way through. Every time there's a little bit of funding, they do the next plan, the next study, the next component. in hopes of big money coming in. The pinch points for that is getting those types of projects out of that plan. So infiltrating that RPO board, infiltrating the board that's making that decision is critical. Identifying who is representing your community or county on that board is who you need to be talking to, because it's probably a resident or a council member.
They refuse to respond to constituent emails or phone calls. They will not meet with us. It's why we've spoken during public comment at their meetings.
Yeah.
But their chairman has told us if the city dares to push back against the project, he will personally motion to have the entire project lost and unfunded from our STIP.
Do that.
So
Do
like
that.
that's kind of like what we're
Do
dealing
that.
with. I'm just trying to find like where can we actually have influence
Yeah.
if nobody will talk to us or meet with us or hear the concerns of the community that this design impacts. We're going to lose more than 40 homes and businesses in a small town of 9,000 as a result of this project. More than $60 million in assessed property tax value. Like it's insane.
And it's an
This isn't
improvement.
a
It's an and it's a safety project, is what everyone continues to say. The city manager, the city council, the RPO, everyone says that this is a safety project, but I don't see how turning a residential road into a 4-lane divided highway addresses the safety concerns.
there are two different approaches here.
Yeah.
One is to go and attack that project and do everything you can to get it out of every plan, to get it defunded, to stop the acquisitions, to do all those things. There's multiple layers of decision making that have led up to that. I assure you, if you go through those plans, there is somewhere in there public engagement that has been credited to support the project. And that could be as simple as we had a meeting and people showed up. So it's a completely flawed system. So that is one approach. And there's all different types of getting on the board. Your city council has signed off on this in some sort of way because they probably are a joint applicant for the funding. It sounds like the city manager does not see this as a problem. So that's another position. I don't know if that is an appointed or elected or hired position, but all of that. That takes lots and lots of energy, and you're putting all of that time against something that was started back in 2014 through somebody's big vision for this. It's hard. Those are hard to do. The other approach is to go and recognize all the energy you spend on that and figure out where in the city you actually could do a project that is meaningful. Because in every city, there are locally controlled streets that need help and improvement. They're unsafe, they're unproductive, that for whatever reason, something on this particular corridor inspired this grandiose project to be thrown on it, whatever the safety pieces are for it. By working in other parts of the city, doing other things, you can shift that dialogue. And that will require shifts on elected leadership, on staffing, but by working through projects in other areas of the city, even the most incremental things, it starts to show that you can actually achieve the same objectives with less resources more quickly, and it will be better received than the point of where you're at now in a completely adversarial position. But it doesn't sound like anything good is going to come out of this. And if they're threatening to pull the project, celebrate that, ask them how you can help.
Yeah. How to hasten it. I'm looking at the design document that you linked in an email to us, and just, I mean, there are 5 priorities that I think are on page, page 10. A right size with maintainable infrastructure. Priority given to pedestrians and cyclists. Safety of all users is a must. Limit property and right-of-way takings. Support surrounding uses through attractive design and human scale. That sounds like a plan, which in the vision is not a thing that they're intending to be bound by.
Well, Norm, I will offer, I sent you guys, so the city the city council previous voted against the project, not once, but twice.
Wow.
But the RPO refused to remove it from the STIP, even though the city asked for that to happen multiple times and DOT asked for that to happen multiple times. For whatever reason, our RPO does not support their localities. So the
Okay.
city actually spent $75,000 in 2021 and hired Stantec to develop the plan that the city wants to see, the thoughtful, pedestrian-focused beautification of a boulevard that really prioritizes the pedestrian safety concerns of the corridor. Because we've unfortunately in the last year, we've had 3 pedestrian fatalities because there's no crosswalks or anything in this corridor of town, and
Mm.
it's a residential corridor.
Yeah.
And the NCDOT did not provide a feasibility study or an assessment or an evaluation of that design. They just simply said it won't work. And unfortunately, that was that. And so they came back to the table in February of this year saying our 4-lane divided highway is non-negotiable. This is what we're going to do. And that will be that. And that's kind of when we then launched the coalition and I began trying to seek out resources to understand, are we really just going to have to sit down and take it? Or are there any avenues that we can use to influence a stop to this project?
Mm-hmm. God.
Yeah, getting out of the plan, getting it defunded. Um, there's also some strategy when we look at the step. The money that is, so when you look at the step, there is money that has been allocated for this project for design and acquisition and all the different steps. There's also future expenses that they're going to have, right, to construct this particular roadway. All that money gets like kind of portioned out for the projects, and you'll see every year there's more project demands than there is cash available in every plan. The way I was able to get stuff out of our STIP and off of our MPO long range plans that were dumb projects in my community is that I enticed the other communities that wanted dumb projects that were expensive to take the money. So by making motions to remove it, like the other communities was like, I just made it very clear to them that where my project in my community that we don't want is like number 3 or 4 on the list, theirs are 5 and 6, and the $500,000 study, the $3 million, whatever it's going to cost to build, all that moves in the table down to their stuff. And there are things that just do that. So that helped to move that and the other projects moving forward. I suspect there's somebody politically that's pushing this because it's a celebratory project, something to get a ribbon cutting on. And
Is
that's
there
what they're,
perceived workforce that is currently cut off from your community that like sometimes it will be, is there developable land further on that there is, plans in place, but there's a perception that the traffic limits are restricting that ability to develop that. I mean, sometimes identifying not who the villain is, but who stands to benefit is one of those things. And the troubling thing is sometimes when projects are done simply because it stands to benefit the immediate project team. Like I would at least settle for a longer term benefit to, the golf course developer that turns it into, a mega factory that, brings billions. But sometimes it's just for the sake of employing contractors. And that's especially backwards. And maybe, I mean, this is a little bit of a pivot, but this is where we begin to see the utility of a cul-de-sac as the ultimate defensive weapon against your street ever being turned into a road. And it's really pernicious because this cul-de-sac does not function well from a connectivity perspective. It decreases fire response times. Cul-de-sacs are poor for cultivating neighborhoods, except for in that immediate area. However, the one thing that can be said about it is the ultimate backstop against that street ever being turned, because you would have to bulldoze a bunch of homes, which our cities are happy to do when it's on a right-of-way, but much less likely to do when it's sort of adjoining two cul-de-sacs. I've not seen that occur. And the consequence is that what we are concerned about is disconnected traffic patterns. The trouble is we have simultaneously not earned a reputation as stewards of the public realm, that streets rather are just maintained as streets and allowed to continue to function as streets. And a key element of that is just saying, in this corridor, the way that the Stantec proposal designs it, as I read a little bit further down, like there's a lot of things of just narrowing the lane widths, still allowing movement of vehicles through. So it's not saying we're cutting off an artery, but we are really right sizing it and getting that right. So to Lonnie's point too, if the city voted it down once or twice, rather, it seems legal might be the only path, or pursuing an injunction. That is always a political sort of path. And so if there is any sort of lawmakers that can be brought on board, sometimes they can be brought on for, to try to create the perception of a bipartisan approach on this, that, hey, you have your fiscal hawks over here that are just sick and tired of bad projects. And then you have the community sort of advocates that are sick and tired of bad projects and trying to bring that together. But that is a pitched battle, especially when local government is being ignored in that way. That's a profound, yeah. And maybe, and then just one element too is I always grapple, at what point do I just accept losses and move on to other projects to, if this thing is so baked, and it's about to come out of the oven, do you have to just like grit your teeth and try to make it better? But it seems it's still like killable at this point, or I don't want to use overly violent language, so it's still stoppable. But we do have this sense that sometimes the fix can be in, or just, you said your RPO is endorsing it. That is extremely disheartening. Eric Auney is on here, who's part of the MPO in Santa Fe, right, Eric? And maybe Eric, actually, why don't you, I know you're in a different jurisdiction, but can you describe, I think you are aware that some MPOs do good, some MPOs do bad, in a very simplistic framing. Any thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, I've been delving in on the details. First of all, number one, I'm horrified. This is tragic. What I'm reading as a justification for this project is textbook, right out of Chuck's book of what to be aware of. So number one, and if you want, we can talk later offline on some of these things. You have a FHWA division office. I don't know if you've tried to reach out to the FHWA division office. That might be. And I know that North Carolina has an integrated mobility division, which in its spirit and in its purpose ought to be supporting such projects in the reverse, right? Or the other project that you speak of. But yeah, I could do a bit of which I like to do anyway, but analysis, and I can email you some suggestions on maybe some strategies. But yeah, this is right out of the textbook of what not to do. It's just astonishing to me. So I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Eric. And I will offer it. We've really learned a lot on the autonomy in which our divisions operate for NCDOT, I think, is to the detriment, because we have seen great things coming out of Division 8 for us, which is in the western part of the state, Charlotte, Asheville, great case studies, and they have been an excellent resource to us. But just because one part of your state is operating with best practices doesn't mean that eastern rural North Carolina gets to see that same sort of like thought-provoking development happening. And so, yes, would welcome a conversation. So thank you. I'll reach out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please do. Yeah. And then when I was in Charlotte, North Carolina a few years ago, I met some transportation consultants that are really committed to doing good things. So I can put you in touch with those nice people too. So yeah, I'll be happy to talk offline.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Man, just pausing to get meta here. This is why I love the idea we're a strong towns movement. We're in this. So thank you, Eric. That's excellent as well. And I think to your comment about the pursuing the wrong path, especially for rural areas, one of the things that stands out when I was in the mayor's office, I remember writing letters to residents who wanted traffic calming in their neighborhoods or right around their neighborhood schools. And one of the engineering staff said, Norm, you wouldn't believe how many of these types of requests we get. And we can't, we have standards that we have to meet. And especially if you think of, rural highways, you could imagine an engineer saying, hey, every community thinks that they're special and that they need the road to go slow through their community. And I'm like, now Norm is absolutely, there is no justification for blazing it through. Haven't we, at minimum go around if you have the ability to, but the idea that we just say oh, it's being too precious to ask for the road to go slow through your neighborhood is actually the exact opposite of what you need to be embracing. Richard, yeah, jump in.
Hey, thanks. Hey, Ellen, real quick. Your story is just so, it's tragic that we're all dealing with this in one way or the other. Real quick, we don't have an RPO, we have an MPO. But anyway, real quickly, two things. You mentioned how you talk to the people you want to talk to, but they don't either won't listen to you or they just stare at you, which is typical, particularly with public comment periods at city councils. They're not required, well, depends upon each city, but they're only there to listen to the comments. They're not, we have a mayor, fortunately, that does allow for discussion, but that's a separate thing. So we're 33,000, you're 10 some thousand. Do you have any sort of newspaper coverage? And you don't even have to answer. It's just like, it's probably like in our area, we have kind of a newspaper, but it's sad these days. But also I don't try to toss darts at everybody anymore because the newspapers have got to survive. So they've got to play this politically game where they can't they're no longer investigative, which we wish they were. They have to survive. So how do you communicate with your community? And real quickly, I've been through everything and it's so fractured. There's too many social media sites out there and everything just goes, So what I've started doing, and I'm going to be doing more of it, is very simply, when you go to meetings, they officially do meeting reports, like at the city council and whatever what the members have done. Well, I developed an approach of doing reports from the audience. That's what I call it. And what I do is I email it out and I email it to whoever I want because I can. I'm not limited like they are with the quorum issues and who can communicate with who outside of an official meeting. If you don't know about that, you probably do. It's very, very frustrating. Their hands are tied. So if you need to go totally off to one side and start communicating with the whole community, you might consider something like, because you get your information out. That's number one. And the other thing I'm looking at is very simply starting my own YouTube channel, basically the same thing, meeting reports from RL. And it's a common thing and it's consistent. So good luck, Ellen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. That's awesome. 15thstreetcoalition.com. Definitely go check it out. And Ellen, appreciate the conversation. I'm going to pivot to a related question from Ivan from Honolulu. Ivan, I did not realize that you're in Honolulu, but has any other organization adopted Strongtown's view that street design is a major factor in street safety? Edward, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, lots of places. So there's a lot of different programs that are out there, a lot of different discussions. I can tell you that every municipality that I go to, when I go to City Hall, they all are very, very familiar with Strong Towns. They get the emails, they read the blog, they have the books on the shelves. This is a conversation, whether or not they know it's Strong Towns or not, they have that in there. Every community I go to, the commonality in language is all about safe and productive streets. They may not connect the dots of safety or productivity and safety together, but this is emerging out of that work. So lots of cities are doing this. Lots of cities are doing great things, even if they're not under that, what we call kind of the flagship. They haven't put stuff out to say, oh, we're a Strong Towns. Just this week, I saw new numbers out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, in the last, about 3 years ago, they started Vision Zero. And they put it in the City Hall, and it wasn't functioning. Many of the things that were reported in Charlotte, North Carolina with Vision Zero, where they spent millions of dollars towards Vision Zero, but saw an increase in fatalities, things like that were happening in Pittsburgh. What we found as Strong Towns dove into the numbers in Charlotte is that if you put the safety experts at the bottom of the food chain, at the bottom of the org chart, they cannot actually introduce safety as a system-wide policy. So we do all the things, and then after we do it all, we'll try to look and make sure it's safe, as opposed to walking in the door day one and describing that every decision we make at City Hall, whether it's land use, how many police we hire on our staff, or how we design our streets, our first institutional priority will be safety. In Pittsburgh, their first few years of Vision Zero was that. The mayor came out and was so fed up with how many crashes had occurred in that city, how many fatalities were lost on city streets. The mayor and the council came out and, as a policy statement, said that we want to make our streets safer. We want safety as a top priority. They identified that as a policy that is supporting the public, demanding that safety be brought forward, that streets be made safer. Staff then aligned behind that. And they said, what could we do? In addition to just the Vision Zero work, they created a crash response team. Every time there is a serious crash or fatality on any street in the boundary of the city of Pittsburgh, a representative from the mayor's office, a representative from the engineering department, a representative from the streets department, um, and a representative from the police department all convene within 48 hours. And they walk through what sounds just like our crash analysis studio. What were the contributing factors? What were the things that contributed to this fatality and this serious crash? And then with that, what are the things we could do? This is done in a meeting. It's not like a big program. It's not a big report. They sit there and take notes. You've got the political cover from the mayor's office. You've got all of the insight from the police department and the two city departments that can engineer and move stuff in the street. Go do that. They've used lots of paint. They've used lots of bollards. They've used lots of signal changes on lights. There was a pedestrian hit, and they realized that the pedestrian signal did not provide enough time for a pedestrian to get safely across the street. That is something Pittsburgh can fix at an office, somebody's desk on their computer. They can change that. In Pittsburgh, they have been doing this using all of the shoestring budget items, but focusing at safety first, and they're seeing significant decreases in fatalities and road crashes. This is the same work that Barka Patel shared with us in Jersey City. This is the stuff we've seen in Hoboken, New Jersey. Alexandria, Virginia has also had years without the fatalities. So safe streets is emerging in cities where safety is becoming an institutional priority. Not about spending, it's all about safety first at the top. So we're seeing lots of cities adopt that. Out of the crash analysis studio, we have lots of really great examples of cities adopting those approaches. Most of the cities we go to and talk to are on the cusp of doing something great. There's for some reason they are stuck in one piece of just getting over the finish line. Sharing things through Crash Analysis Studio, mobilizing local conversations, doing articles about this seems to help get them unstuck. So in Indianapolis, they're doing a grant program that is a tactical urbanism grant program. You identify a dangerous street or a street you want to improve in your community. As a community group, you can get a grant for a couple $100 and resources of the city to go and do an intervention that's temporary as an experimental project in your community. In Hyattsville, up in Prince George's County, as a result of the crash analysis studio, that allowed staff to update street standards within the city. They've abolished the slip lanes, those right turn slip lanes where you can speed around the corner. That was a contributing factor of the crash that we did a crash studio on. And staff needed the extra oomph to show why it was so critical to remove it from the standards. And it got the support from the county commission to do that, county council to get that work done. In Rochester, New York, the highest per capita fatalities on roadways in all of New York, they use the crash analysis studio to empower staff. So they have a team to go out there and do this work. What did they do? By doing the crash studio, I think there were like 8 recommendations that were identified short term that the small group that we had came up with. That became a challenge for municipal staff to do better. And what they did is not only did they accept and adopt those, they found 5 other things that they could actually do with their resources available that would address the contributing factors to that crash. So I'm seeing it more as practice. I don't think I can point to you and say this city has adopted a strong towns code, but I've seen it as practice. We just heard on the call here today, Eric is somebody that is in the MPO doing incredible work out in Santa Fe. We have folks within City Hall, within county government, within all of these different agencies. I assure you, every engineer I talk to wants safer streets.
Yeah.
So they're all out there. So a really long way to tell you it's not as like out present. There isn't a flag or sticker at the front door of City Hall, but there are many, many cities that are doing incremental things working through this. I wish there were more, but by showcasing what cities are doing, what we're doing at Strong Towns is showing that these cities are not alone, that this is a different way of thinking that conforms to everything they've been taught, everything in the manuals, that citizens have the power, technical staff at City Hall have the power, and elected officials have the power to demand this. So moving that forward. So if there's something that your community is specifically stuck on or some barrier you've hit, um, happy to help direct you to where other cities have also struggled with that so you can start sharing those ideas locally in their thought process and conversation.
Ivan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. Um, I'm not aware of any kind of effort in our Honolulu city government, but what irks me all the time is that whenever there's a traffic fatality, especially if there's a bicyclist uh, or even a drunk driver situation, they always talk about if it's a driver, whether the driver had a seatbelt on, which to me seems totally irrelevant. And if it's a bicyclist, they talk about uh, if the bicyclist had a helmet on, which is again is totally irrelevant. So it seems to me that the public framing of these kinds of incidents still focuses on fault of the driver, fault of the bicyclist. I've never seen any coverage at all about design factors or situations that in the physical environment. So to me, that's a hurdle that still has not been crossed. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
curious about it.
And you see that in the well-meant signs that say "Drive like your children live here," and at Strong
Right.
Towns, we always say, "No, design the street like your children live here." Like,
I've dropped in the chat the
yeah.
link to the crash analysis studio.
Mhm.
The report that Strong Towns developed after doing 18 of these crashes is called Beyond Blame. What we see, let's think through crashes. So they're not accidents, they're crashes. Let's break through the mythology of it that cities are unable, that they're always going to happen. These types of crashes are preventable. There are things they can do. The mindset we have today on our streets when it comes to vehicular crashes is that when there's a crash, we send in the emergency units, the ambulances, the police department, the fire trucks. They go and they deal with the carnage. They take the people to the hospital. The police figure out who they're going to assign blame to, and then Public Works sweeps up the glass and moves on. And that's the end of that conversation. And then it happens again. And then maybe if it happens a whole bunch of times, somebody's concerned and they realize there's some federal money and maybe we'll go do a big project that will do that. Um, that's the process. It's all about assigning blame. What the conversation that you need to start working on, and I would encourage you to share in your community, is that you in fact have the power to stop these types of crashes, to address those contributing factors. And that we should not just assign blame, we should actually look to see what the contributing factors are. A bicyclist is not more reckless because they were or were not wearing a bike helmet. A driver is not more reckless if they're not wearing their seatbelt. There are many contributing factors to all of these crashes. What we found in the Beyond Blame report, we identified several things that were common occurrences in all of those crashes. And we talk about that. So when you look at one of these crashes, you find in almost all of them, there was an issue of speed. People were driving faster than the posted speed. Why? The built environment is encouraging them and signaling to them that they could drive faster. The other thing that we saw on all of these is people were making risky decisions. The built environment. So, like every one of the fatalities in the crash studios, in all of them that we have done, when a cyclist or a pedestrian has been hit by a car, in every single one of them, it was clear that neither the driver nor the cyclist or pedestrian knew that either were in the location of the street and to the time of impact. In every single one of these, the police report said that the driver said somebody came out of nowhere. The braking of the vehicles was far beyond the intersection. We also know that there's no human on a bike or walking that would jump in front of a car intentionally in these conditions. Everybody that were victims of these crashes all had a fruitful life with happy families and people that cared about them in their communities. So this was like, but what we found in these is that there were design elements in all of these conditions that resulted in people making risky decisions. And we've designed these types of roadway systems so that even the most modest of mistakes results in a fatality. So if you're trying to start that conversation in Honolulu or in your community, I would start with looking at that Beyond Blame report. I'd read through it, I'd share it, because I will assure you other people will relate to the content in there. I'm sure that the contributing factors in many of those crashes are ones that you can identify in your community and relate to. The next piece to it is to start to raise awareness of the types of things that are contributing to those crashes. And if you want to host a crash studio, I would love to provide you that support. We can nominate one, or maybe you want to hold one locally. We've had a couple of folks hold studios even before the crash occurred. The street that we know is dangerous, they've used this tool to go out there and document the things to identify that. Through that process, you raise awareness. So as citizens doing this work, I find is really great because it shows that citizens can do it. We've got high school students out in California that have created a high school club focused around safe streets, and they're doing 2 crash analysis studios a year. We have engineering students at Dordt University up in is it Illinois or Iowa that are using this as their core introduction to transportation engineering as their course. So it is resonating with the folks that are building our future. So going out and doing one of those studios, what we find is it breaks down all the myths that there are actual things that your city could do. In all of these crashes, there's usually a dozen things that could be done tomorrow with paint, cones, straw bales, signage, trimming trees. These are all things that cities could actually do in the next 24 to 48 hours. These are the things that places that Pittsburgh, Hoboken, Jersey City, Alexandria, Virginia are doing as they are seeing crashes in their community, and it's resulting into significant reductions of crashes. Places like Prince George's County are going a step further to update their design manuals so we don't repeat the mistakes of that design in future work in their municipalities. So it is a slow, methodical process. I'd start with the report, share that broadly, read through it, point to the things that relate to what you're seeing in your community. And then if you want to take the step and do a crash studio or learn more about it, love to walk through that with you, because I think that that kind of interactive process is a way that can get a lot of people to the table to help them become more aware. And once they do that studio, you can't unsee this stuff. We just did some social posts recently on Instagram with our Connecticut crash studio, most recent one. And you look at the picture and it's like, okay, it looks like every other street in the city. And then Caroline has gone and put bubbles to the things that were pointed out in the studio. And it's like, boom, it's like flashes right in front of your face. You can't unsee it. And it's like, oh yeah, those tree branches are low. We should prune them. Oh yeah, the telephone pole blocks where the pedestrian stands. That's probably an area we should put up bollards or extend the curb line. You can't unsee it. And now we can have a real discussion about the contributing factors. And again, it reinforces these are things that we all can do to make our streets safer.
Thank you very much. I'm still in a city where they just put up a traffic signal in a protected bike lane that the signal is behind a light pole. So I don't understand how engineers think, but
Right.
they do that.
In my town, I just did a video that went viral that I'm not my city's not too happy about, but we had a telephone pole in the middle of a crosswalk. The backstory to that is that I watched the public works director restripe that crosswalk. I brought it up with the technical staff at City Hall that should know better, and they laughed at me. I brought it up with our elected officials, and they went and they said, "Oh, we've trusted staff. They're working on a grant. We're going to get that in, X amount of years." We just have to keep showing these things because once you see it, the crash in Madison, Wisconsin, you should watch that studio. The reason there was a fatality at that intersection is because they put up a transformer box, a switch box, to when they upgraded the pedestrian cross button. When they put that switch box there, it blocked where pedestrian or cyclists would be. So driver behavior when they creeped in the intersection to make a right turn on red ran over a cyclist. Nobody saw that because of a well-intentioned upgrade to the intersection. But when we stood out there, it was undeniable that it was at fault of that transformer box, and that action needs to be to that. So the Crash Studio provides a framework that we can do that in a constructive way and a language that your technical officials will understand. It may be tough on this one, but I will assure you, once you point it out, it will never occur again in your city because they will always look to make sure that that is not happening again. And just so I like this Crash Studio because it brings multiple people to the table to bring that awareness and just keep bringing that awareness up, fill out the tickets of service requests. When you show up to public meetings, your first public meetings you show up to, talk about how you ride, how you walk, how people utilize that as a benefit for your community. Start with that a couple of times. Then show up at the meeting or have coffee with staff after the fact and point out where the problem is. Because it's probably something they could fix or do something to from an engineering side. But if you come from a position of positivity of your community and describe how people use it, it builds credibility up than opposed to just showing up and complaining and saying the engineers are stupid. They should have seen this on the drawing. Really, really working through that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, I think we have time for a final question, although we're almost at the top of the hour. Maybe we'll go right into programming notes. Chesla, I apologize. I know you submitted two great questions, so we'll definitely have to take up. The short answer is I don't know because I'm not from Wisconsin. Is anyone from Wisconsin or familiar with the Wisconsin code that prevents a city from lowering the speed limit? The reality is most of the time we see this with fire standards. We see this also with other types of standards. Lots of times these types of codes don't exist, but are appealed to. Edward, any quick reactions on this, and then we'll have to wrap up, unfortunately.
Yeah. The thing that I come with this is that I don't think just changing the sign addresses the struggle. So really looking at what the struggle is on the street, what reduces car speed is the design of the road, the geometry of the street. And so if there's a location, I love drawing this stuff. If there's a location that you have that says this is the spot that something is happening, I'd love to show you how to do a speed study. And happy to send you out a speed gun and show you how all that works. so you can see if people are speeding, and then walk through the types of things at that particular location that a city might be able to do that would cue drivers to drive the desired speed. And our local conversations out in Portland and out in Sacramento are doing these types of projects every couple of months. They're fixing intersections, putting in crosswalks that are resulting in tangible things that we can count and measure to show it's actually resulting in a lower speed. And all the stuff they're doing is a couple $100 worth of materials, 80 minutes of work. Some of these materials, they're starting with taking them from the soccer field, temporarily seeing how it lays out. But happy to, if you email me, edward@strongtowns.org, happy to look at that and walk through that in great detail with you.
Hey, folks, we're at the top of the hour, but I did want to mention, I know the chat gets a little crazy, but one of the things that I've been doing is capturing all of the chat recordings and putting it in a resource page that goes with this afterwards. And so if you're interested, this is on our main site. You can either go to Learn under Action Lab or click the little search button, and that will take you over to the Strong Towns Action Lab. This is where we have a catalog of our 10,000 articles that we published on the site, as well as a whole bunch of other resources. And the thing I want to highlight here is under Ask Strong Towns Anything, I do my best to try to, within a couple of days, put up the full episode recordings and to even include a summary of the content that we covered in the chat. So this is Edward in his finest, as well as just some of the things that we're covering. This is the benefit of using ChatGPT, is that it does a pretty good job of saying, like, hey, here's some of the resources that are there. So we talked about these types of things. It's been one of the ways that I think I can make good use of what we are sharing together in the chat and then being able to drop that in here. So if you're interested, definitely go check that out afterwards. That's if you were like, whoa, we just got into a fraction of the things that I was interested in. That will show up within a couple of days. So that's under the Ask Strong Towns Anything tab. We used to do sort of specific Q&A segments. Those are available, and this does get posted to YouTube as well, but this can be useful for you as well. As always, definitely check out more of the resources in the Action Lab. We've got a whole section here on the Crash Analysis Studio, more of the detailed stuff. So we have the main page with the report, but this actually includes a lot of the findings for specific intersections where we did Crash Analysis Studio in all of these different places. Just seeing that reveals just how much passion, energy, and sort of input from residents, members all across the United States and Canada has really begun to shift the balance here. So we are at the top of the hour, which does mean that we start to wrap up right around this point. This has been, it's not fun, but it's powerful, and I think it is helping as we equip each other. Ellen, I'm so grateful for your multifaceted question. I think that sparked a really powerful discussion. Similarly, Ivan and Chesla, there's more to come. Thank you all for contributing in the chat as well. And yeah, as you continue to carry on this challenge of making places that are suitable for people to thrive, for everyone to feel dignified and honored. We have a long ways to go, but I'm given hope by the fact that one, a lot of people are committed to this vision, and two, we're actually starting to see some progress. So let's keep it up. Wish you well. Thank you.
And
all.
Norm,
Yes.
remind everybody, we do this every week.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So if we didn't get your question,
Yeah.
or new questions came out, or you are watching this video in the future and you want to dive into it, go ahead, come back next week.
Yeah.
It's every Wednesday. We would love to go through those questions. And the secret is, make sure Norm knows that you're going to attend and which day, and he will get you lined up first on the list.
It's true, but I did only give Chesla 2 minutes. but I love that. And yes, definitely let me know, even if you're like, hey, I think I can make it. I would love to contribute. Just really appreciate, each of you and your time today. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Keep doing what you can to build strong towns.